Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News. Here's a look at some of the top stories we have lined up for you tonight. Tensions rise in the Middle East as Israel targets Hamas leaders in Qatar while they discuss ceasefire in Gaza. Plus, the Israeli military urges an evacuation of Gaza City and drops leaflets warning Palestinians to get out. And the Prime Minister of Nepal resigns as protests escalate following a ban on social media.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks so much for joining us. Tensions in the Middle East are on the rise after Israel launched a strike on Hamas leadership in Qatar. The attack came as they discussed a U.S. proposal for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. We get details from John Gambrell with the Associated Press.
Qatar's come out strongly condemning this strike that apparently happened when Hamas leaders were talking about a ceasefire deal now on the table over the Israel-Hamas war in the Gaza Strip. Israel has been threatening to launch a new offensive on Gaza City. We still don't know just how many people were hurt or killed in this attack, but it marks the second time that Qatar, an energy-rich nation on the Arabian Peninsula, has been targeted during the Mideast wars that came from Hamas's initial October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel. Back in June, Iran launched an attack on a Qatari airbase home to U.S. airmen over the Americans bombing Iranian nuclear sites. But this time, this is different. The Qataris have come out strongly against Israel. We've also seen regional countries like the United Arab Emirates also say that they back Qatar in this. So this likely will further strain the relationships that Israel has with the Gulf Arab countries, which it's been so desperate to try to make diplomatic recognition deals with, and likely is going to cause more tension in the wider Middle East as this offensive looms.
And as expected, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned the Israeli strike.
I condemn this flagrant violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Qatar. All parties must work towards achieving a permanent ceasefire, not destroying it. Today's breaking news underscores the importance of the report that we launched today. It lays bare a stark reality. The world is spending far more on waging war than on building peace.
Meantime, the Israeli military is urging a full evacuation of Gaza City ahead of expanded military operations. The IDF dropped leaflets this morning warning Palestinians to get out.
وأنا ناسحين ومش عارف يمكن الله يخرجها إن شاء الله هيك يضربوننا ونتريح.
The warning came hours after the military intensified airstrikes on the urban area. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned this is only the beginning of the intensified ground maneuver there. In the South Asian nation of Nepal, the country's prime minister resigned Tuesday as protests escalated following a ban on popular social media platforms. So far, 19 protesters have died in the anti-corruption demonstrations. Protesters set fire to Nepal's parliament building today, smashing windows inside the building. Protesters can also be seen dancing and chanting around fires in the streets. Apparently, they have also blocked off the airport to prevent ministers from escaping the country. Nepal's army chief has invited protesters to engage in dialogue to find a solution to the country's current political crisis. He says there has been huge loss of life and property during the protests so far and urged demonstrators to show restraint. Here at home, housing starts were flat in the first half of the year compared with 2024. Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation says the country's two most expensive real estate markets weighed on the overall number of housing starts, with Vancouver and Toronto seeing declines. But it says cities like Calgary, Edmonton, Montreal, Ottawa, and Halifax built homes at paces that were either at or near records or in line with historical averages in the first half of the year. And to deal with the housing crisis, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre wants Prime Minister Mark Carney to adopt his party's plan. Poilievre says the Liberals should eliminate the federal sales tax on all homes worth $1.3 million or less. He wants to incentivize municipalities to speed up permits and cut development charges.
30% of the cost of a new home in Ontario today is direct taxes. 50%, as much as 50%. Is related to land use regulations. In Vancouver today, fully 60% of the cost of a new home is government. Taxes, charges, delays, fees, lawyers, accountants. More money for a new home goes to bureaucrats in government buildings than goes to the carpenters, electricians, and plumbers who actually build the home. The governments keep talking about how they have these wonderful plans for home building. You know what they need to do? Only one thing. Get out of the way.
Poilievre also says the government needs to get immigration under control, as he argues the large influx of newcomers over the past decade has caused housing shortages. And speaking of the feds, despite the Liberals not holding many seats across the prairies, they have decided to hold their upcoming retreat in Edmonton before Parliament resumes. According to political commentator Brian Lilley, this is a purposeful move.
Because they don't have a lot of seats in the prairies. I mean, that's exactly why. So if you count just the prairie provinces, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, there's 65 seats. And of those, the Liberals hold just 9. 9, that's it. They hold 20 seats in British Columbia out of, I believe, 43. So not quite half, but they have a good representation in British Columbia. But across the prairie provinces, it's 9 of 65. They've got 6 in Manitoba. They've got 2 in Alberta. They've got 1 in Saskatchewan. They're not doing well. And so I think this is an attempt to say, look, we hear you. We want to work with you. We are concerned about your issues. So there's a bit of politics in there, but also a bit of let's actually deal with one of the economic engines of the country that has not been getting a lot of love.
You can catch my full interview with Brian Lilley, where he also discusses the PM's announcement about how he's going to boost the economy. That's all coming up after Business News. The Alberta government has released its updated policy on books that will be available in school libraries. The new ban will only apply to books with images and illustrations of explicit sexual acts, not written descriptions. During a technical briefing with reporters, Education Minister Dimitrios Nicolaides said visual depictions have been the government's main concern, and the revised order will ensure literary classics stay in schools. We get more from Jack Farrell with the Canadian Press.
The government's original policy had told school boards to remove all books from its libraries that had written passages or images or illustrations or audio. And because of that, one public school board in Edmonton had put together a list of over 200 books that included some major titles like Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. But because of today's revision, that book and others that had made Edmonton Public's list, like Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, will be left alone on school library shelves. And the government says, it was never their intention to remove literary classics from shelves. Its main concern is just on images and illustrations of explicit sexual content. It'll be interesting to see how the school boards, 1, react to the new rules, and 2, how they actually eventually comply with them. So another interesting part is that under the new rules, every school board will have to submit a list to the province by October 31st. The province doesn't have to approve the list, but they will still have to be given the list. It would make sense to me that so will the public. The public will see these lists too, and it will be a compare and contrast situation with that. I'm sure some authors who found themselves on the first list from Edmonton Public will also probably respond in kind and maybe talk about their books not being pulled from shelves, because we saw a lot of reaction. Richard Van Camp, a well-known Canadian author, he too was quite upset that his book, The Lesser Blessed, was put on Edmonton Public's list, and he encouraged people to protest the order and to be angry about a government banning books like his. The minister told reporters today that the government is more concerned with images of sexual content and getting that out of schools because his not a direct quote, but the minister had said images are easy to comprehend for anybody in any grade level. Whereas the written word, the minister said, is dependent, like the understanding of written passages is dependent on children's vocabulary, reading level, etc. So the minister said their focus on images is because the minister thinks it's easier for everybody to understand what an image is versus to read it and understand it.
Alberta's opposition NDP says this rewritten policy changes nothing. It only creates more work for teachers and school staff who must catalog books that contravene the UCP ministerial order. They also say it pits parents against schools just because someone might not like a certain book. A pair of cattle ranchers from southern Alberta are in Levi, Quebec to represent our province at the national level for the Environmental Stewardship Award, an honor presented by the Canadian Cattle Association to recognize beef producers who explore innovative ways to protect, preserve, and enhance their operations and the environment simultaneously. BCN's Naveen Day visited Plateau Cattle Co. to learn more about how ranchers and cows work together in an utterly environmentally sustainable way.
Laura Lang and John Smith of Plateau Cattle Co. have been recognized by the Alberta beef producers as the Environmental Stewardship Award recipient for Alberta for 2025. The operation, close to Nanton, runs 450 highly efficient and functional purebred Black Angus and Angus-influenced cows. Lang believes environmental stewardship means much more than it did just a few generations ago.
I think for us today, we're realizing even more so. We can look outside and see all of the smoke that's come in, and that's something that's different. The climate has changed, and some of the things we face are changing.
Smith says when he and Lang found out about the nomination, it was a surprising and humbling experience for the two.
Our vet partners, VHS, Veterinary Agri-Health Services, nominated us, and that was a real surprise. We had no idea that was on anybody's radar, and so to be counted, among a lot of great producers in Alberta, we were just humbled and shocked.
Cattle ranching can sometimes receive a bad reputation when it comes to environmental stewardship. Some activists say methane from cattle contributes to climate change. But according to Plateau Cattle Co., the beef sector needs to thrive, not just for the economy, but for the environment.
Cattle is what's going to keep the grass. So we need to have a thriving beef sector to protect our disappearing grasslands. If you don't have a keystone species such as beef or cattle to graze those grasses, they're going to disappear, they're going to get turned over. There's so many good things that happen there. It aids in biodiversity of your grass species and forbs all the other species that are in there as well. So creates habitat for birds, animals.
The cattle actually help us manage the environment. They're a real tool. They help with wildfire suppression,
Yes.
Keeping some of the fire ignition out of the forestry. And they help restore the grasslands. So we talk a lot about carbon sequestration. And I think consumers are starting to, or have, as far as we've seen, really understand the importance that they play.
Laura and John are in Levi, Quebec to compete in the Nationals until September the 11th. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
Thanks so much, Nav. Lethbridge police have laid charges and seized 20 animals over the past week as part of 3 unrelated animal cruelty investigations. On September 2nd, police and community animal services responded to a report of a dog in distress at a home along the 500 block of 18th Street South. The emaciated dog did not have access to food or water and had sores and an open wound on its body. The dog was seized and transported to a local veterinarian for treatment. The owners, 39-year-old John Joseph Rosenberg and 45-year-old Atia Leslie Fleming, both of Lethbridge, are charged with causing unnecessary suffering to an animal. Both were released with conditions not to possess or care for any domestic animal and are scheduled to appear in court on October the 28th. The second investigation saw multiple animals seized after a house in the 600 block of 9th Street South was deemed unfit for habitation. The 2 tenants there, a 23-year-old woman and 22-year-old man were ordered to vacate the property. That investigation is ongoing. And the third incident saw 5 cats seized from an unattended vehicle in the alley alongside Leaside Avenue. The 55-year-old owner of the vehicle was identified and issued 5 bylaw tickets for failing to provide basic animal care. His name is not being released. Well, every day we should show a bit of gratitude, but September 21st is actually World Gratitude Day, a time to reflect and express gratitude and appreciation. In this spirit, the City of Lethbridge has launched the Gratitude in Play campaign, which aims to highlight the important role community members play in making sports and recreation more enjoyable and inclusive. The city is encouraging residents to nominate individuals who help make parks, gyms, and fields more fun and welcoming places.
We want to show thanks and we want to show our gratitude, and so anybody that you can think of that advocates for sport and rec in Lethbridge is great to be nominated. We knew we wanted to do something special to thank our heroes in the community that really advocate for play for Lethbridge. That includes all of our coaches, volunteers, teammates. Anybody can be nominated as long as they have some kind of connection to sport and recreation. Just going to lethbridge.ca, our website, finding our news story, and you can fill out an application online. You just explain why you think your special individual needs to be recognized and thanked for World Gratitude Day. After the nominations are all received by September 18th, we'll narrow down the nominations, and our grand winner will have a plaque to recognize our gratitude to them for the community.
Although this is a new initiative for the city, World Gratitude Day has been celebrated globally since 1965. This month, Lethbridge gets to be treated with a stage adaptation of one of the most popular whodunits in the last few decades. New West Theatre is presenting Clue, a murder mystery thriller based on the iconic board game and 1985 cult classic film of the same name. The production cast say intense rehearsals quickly turned them into a closely connected ensemble.
The rehearsal process was fabulous. We all learned an absolute ton from Mark, who is a bit of an icon in Canadian theatre. But it was very intense, so we rehearsed 8 hours a day, 6 days a week for 4 or 5 weeks?
About 4 weeks.
About 4 weeks.
There's a lot of physical comedy in the show and really precise timing. So when you come see it, you'll know there's a lot of moving pieces, which we were able to have in rehearsal, which was a great gift to us. Like, all the incredible team here at New West Theatre have been so supportive of us through the rehearsal process. It's just been fantastic. It's very much based on the screenplay by, I believe, Sandy Reston wrote the original screenplay, and he's credited as one of the authors. So it's very much, if there's iconic moments that you love in the film, there's a really good chance you're going to see them on stage.
Clue runs until September the 20th with 8 shows a week from Tuesday through Sundays. That show looks like a lot of fun. Here in Lethbridge today, summer's not finished with us yet. Beautiful sunshine as we climbed it to 28 degrees. A complete look at our local and national forecasts is on the way next. We are seeing a lot of 20s across the board over the next 7 days. Look at those temperatures right there. A lot of sunshine too. Until we get to about Thursday night, then we're going to see some moisture roll in there. So 70% chance of showers by Thursday evening. But like I was mentioning, these temperatures here. So 28 today, 25 tomorrow on Wednesday, 26 Thursday, 21 on Friday and Saturday. That's when we're going to see that moisture in the area lasting right up until Saturday evening. And then Sunday, Monday, mainly cloudy skies with highs of 22 and 20 degrees respectively. So the average high for this time of year, 21 degrees, average low 6 degrees. The record high on this day was 32 degrees, happening back in 1981, and back in 1928 was the record low for Lethbridge, which was -3. Sunrise this morning at 6:58 and sunset this evening at 7:58. So that means exactly 13 hours of daylight. Days are getting shorter and shorter. Oh no. Okay, highs of 20 degrees in Victoria, highs of 21 in Vancouver. Vancouver going to be more like 24 further inland and increasing clouds there. Edmonton and Calgary, both local smoke. Edmonton seeing a 30% chance of showers by the afternoon, risk of thunderstorms. 25 for the high there, 24 expected in Calgary with mainly sunny skies. Looking into Saskatoon, we're also seeing local smoke there and then becoming a mix of sun and cloud later on in the day, but mainly sunny skies throughout the earlier portions of the day there. 29 degrees for the high, 28 in Regina and 26 in Winnipeg, both with sunny and hazy conditions there. Over in Toronto and the rest of the central part of the country, seeing highs of 24, mainly sunny skies, 24 also the high in Ottawa tomorrow, and a high of 25 degrees in Montreal. As we look into Atlantic Canada, Fredericton seeing fog dissipating in the morning and then sunshine by the afternoon, 23 for the high, high of 20 degrees in Halifax with a 30% chance of showers, 22 for the high in Charlottetown and high of 18 degrees in St. John's with mainly clear skies. So there you have it. That is your forecast. Average asking rents in Canada continue to go down in August. A new report from rentals.ca and Urbanation says the average rental rate across the country was $2,137 in August, down 2.3% from a year ago. Vancouver and Calgary saw some of the biggest declines, down 9.3% and 9.5% respectively from August of 2024. While the latest figures mark 11 straight months of declines, the results are still up 1% from 2023. Vancouver-based Tech Resources and Anglo American have announced an agreement to merge their operations. A statement from the two mining and natural resources companies released last night says that they will form the Anglo Tech Group. It claims the so-called merger of equals will create a company that will be a global critical minerals champion and one of the world's largest producers of copper. The two companies are committing to having Anglo Tech's global headquarters in Vancouver with corporate offices in London and Johannesburg. Apple revealed their new lineup of tech products on Tuesday that will be released later this month. The new generation of iPhone models will include the iPhone 17, all featuring better cameras, longer battery life, and new silicone chips. The A19 and A19 Pro chips. The first ever iPhone Air is marketed as the thinnest iPhone model ever with a slimmed down design. Other items such as the new AirPods Pro 3 and various new Apple Watches will also simultaneously be released. The new generation of products are also expected to further enhance the use of Apple Intelligence, the company's new built-in AI program. All products will hit store shelves September 19th with pre-orders available for this Friday. Now here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 35 points on the day to finish at 29,063. The Dow was up 196 points to 45,711. The S&P 500 was up 17 to 6512, and the Nasdaq was up 80 points to finish at 21,879. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 51 cents to 62.77 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 1 cent to 3.10 US. Gold was down 9.15 to 36.2655 US an ounce, and silver was down 48 cents to $40.86 per bushel. Feed wheat is at $7.18 per bushel. Barley is at $5.50. Canola is at $14.10, and corn is at $7.32 per bushel. Live cattle October contract was down $5.62 to $230.17. Feeder cattle were down $9.25 to $351.70. Lean hogs October contract was up 97 cents to 96.12, and the Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 72.20 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, the Prime Minister says Canada condemns Israel's strike in Qatar and calls it an intolerable expansion of violence. Israel struck Hamas's leadership as they gathered in Doha to consider a U.S. proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza. Hamas says its top leaders survived the strike, but 5 lower-level members were killed. Prime Minister Mark Carney says attacks like this endanger efforts to secure lasting peace as well as the release of all hostages. The fall sitting of Parliament is coming up quick, which has the Liberal caucus meeting for their retreat in Edmonton, of all places. According to political columnist for the Toronto Sun, Brian Lilley, this is a purposeful move. I'll be chatting with Brian about this and more coming up next. Also, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. You can also visit our website or YouTube channel anytime to check out more of our stories and interviews. Despite Liberals not holding many seats across the prairies, they are holding their retreat in Edmonton before Parliament resumes. Also, the Prime Minister made an announcement about ways that he will try to boost the economy. So here to chat about all of it is political commentator Brian Lilley of the Toronto Sun. Brian, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, great to have you as always. So, Brian, Prime Minister Mark Carney and his Liberal caucus, they're going to be in Edmonton for a retreat.
Yep.
And while there, he's going to be meeting with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. And Brian, you just recently spoke with Smith, actually over the weekend. So what's on her agenda?
She's looking to try and find out, okay, you've talked about these major projects, you've set up the major projects office, you're talking about pipelines. What are you actually going to deliver? I think that is going to be her main focus. It is going to be what she tries to determine, and rightly so. Like, look, Mark Carney is saying a lot of the right things, but is he delivering yet? Well, not quite. It's not as if he is failing. It's just that he's talking more than he is delivering. And so at a certain point, you've got to stop with the talk and get with the walk. And so I think that's what she's looking for as she heads into this meeting with him on Wednesday. I think it's Wednesday afternoon.
Okay, interesting. So the Libs don't have many seats across the prairies, but they don't obviously draw a lot of support here in Alberta. So why are they holding their retreat in Edmonton?
Because they don't have a lot of seats in the prairies. I mean, that's exactly why. So if you count just the prairie provinces, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, there's 65 seats. And of those, the Liberals hold just 9. 9, that's it. They hold 20 seats in British Columbia out of, I believe, 43. So not quite half, but they have a good representation in British Columbia. But across the prairie provinces, it's 9 of 65. They've got 6 in Manitoba. They've got 2 in Alberta. They've got 1 in Saskatchewan. They're not doing well. And so I think this is an attempt to say, look, we hear you. We want to work with you. We are concerned about your issues. So there's a bit of politics in there, but also a bit of let's actually deal with one of the economic engines of the country that has not been getting a lot of love of late. So, is some of it political? Absolutely. Is some of it, warranted? Absolutely. So I don't think that, I think that both things can be true at the same time, and they are, trying to make good with the people of Alberta.
Well, speaking about the prairie provinces, Carney's been talking about a new port in Churchill, Manitoba, possibly for exporting oil or LNG. So what did Premier Smith tell you about that idea?
Well, it was interesting because Mark Carney's been talking a lot about this, and some people in various industry groups are saying, no, this won't work. I don't know why you're talking about this so much. And then Premier Smith said, well, Churchill is a major tourism destination, so maybe there is not the right spot. But she said there's a place with a deep water port just south of Churchill that could be good, that would not interrupt the tourism in Churchill. I've got an old friend who does nature photography and takes groups up to places like Churchill, and it is a massive tourism destination. So yeah, you don't want to mess with that. But yeah, maybe we go a little bit further south. But she also talked about the fact that if we want to do this, we need to invest in other infrastructure. You can't just say, okay, we're going to open up a port. It's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. Well, no, you have to have the roads, you have to have the rail lines, you have to have the pipelines. You need icebreakers, which we don't have in any, not in the numbers that we need for this sort of thing. So if you want it to be more than a 5 to 6 month a year port, you've got to invest in infrastructure, rail, roads, icebreakers. That's what needs to be done. That's what she was talking to me about.
All right. Brian, last Friday, Mark Carney made an announcement about ways that he'll try to boost the economy. And you gave the announcement a passing grade, but not quite an A+. So what did you like and what did you not like?
Look, there's some good things, including support for canola producers who are hurting due to the tariffs imposed by China in retaliation for our tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. Look, I think a lot of people will say that the easy thing to do would be to take the tariffs off the Chinese electric vehicles and just let these cheap Chinese cars into our economy. That would be a horrible idea. Why? Because these cars are built for about $25,000 US per vehicle, and they're trying to sell them to us for about $12,500 per vehicle US. So they're selling them at half price. Why? Because they want to overtake the North American market. They want to dominate. They want to flood the market with cheap Chinese vehicles. And that would decimate the auto industry. Now, folks out west may not care about the auto industry, but what is the alternative? If we get rid of that, if we lose that, that is a major economic driver in this country. Canola is also a major economic driver in this country, but the exports to China are only about $5 billion a year. Canola is much, much bigger than that, way bigger than that. And China is a bad actor on this front. Between 2020 and 2022, they blocked all canola exports from Canada into China. In 2017, they did a combination of tariffs and non-tariff barriers to Canadian canola. 2013-14, they were also blocking this. Like, these guys are not good partners. This should not be the focus. We need to find better partners in South Korea, in Japan, in the United States, across South America. We need to figure that out, because anytime that Canada does something that will annoy China, they will block canola. That is their go-to. And so I don't think that, just trying to say, let's placate the Chinese, that'll make things better. I don't think that's going to work.
Brian, there's a push by the Conservatives against the temporary foreign worker program. They say it needs to go. The government disagrees. What's the issue with this program?
So this is a program that's been around for a long time, and it's always controversial, and whoever is in opposition takes focus on this issue. When the Harper Conservatives were in, the Trudeau Liberals attacked the program. They said, oh, you're favoring foreign workers over Canadians. How horrible. You should stop this. Well, the fact is the Harper Conservatives actually put in some guardrails into this program. If unemployment was above 6%, you couldn't get a labor market impact assessment to say, yes, you can hire a temporary foreign worker. You had to have less than 10% of your employees be from the temporary foreign worker program. The Liberals got rid of all of these guardrails in April of 2022. As we're coming out of the pandemic and employers were saying, we need workers, we can't find them, Canadians won't come and work, they got rid of these guardrails, these various rules around the program. Well, that has led to a whole host of problems. In Alberta, the youth unemployment rate, I believe, is about 17%. It was 20%. And then when the job stats numbers came out on Friday, it dropped to 17%. Not because more youth had found jobs, but because more youth stopped looking for work. They just said, all right, I'm done. I'm out. Same thing in Ontario. It's about 14.5%, 15% here in Ontario. Same reason. people are not looking for work anymore. So we've got a huge youth unemployment program. We've got high unemployment for the country as a whole. And the Carney government says, no, we're going to protect this program. Mark Carney said that it's the second biggest issue that he hears about from businesses after tariffs is we need access to foreign workers. Well, maybe you need to start paying people better. And that's what the Liberals used to say when the Conservatives were in power. So, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And we need to take a look at this program. I don't think it needs to go. Pierre Poilievre said, scrap it completely. No, I don't think we need to do that, but we do need to actually adjust the program and make it work for Canadians as well as foreign workers.
Brian, a couple of high-profile home invasions have sparked a debate about self-defense in Canada and the idea that we need to bring in a castle law. But you say that we don't need to do that. Why?
Because castle law already exists in Canada. I mean, it's remarkable that people think it doesn't. On both the left and the right, folks think that this does not exist. But you can go back to a ruling, and I pointed this out in a column in the Toronto Sun, a ruling from 1604 from Sir Edward Coke, who was then Attorney General for England, who said that, yes, if people show up trying to do you harm and you or your servants kill them as they're trying to rob you or murder you, there's no charge. Well, that has been part of Canadian law ever since. We take our common law from the British system, and the idea that we need to, invoke some new law, it is just foreign to me. It should be foreign to every Canadian. Now, does that mean that if someone shows up on your property uninvited, you get to shoot them? No, but it was never that. We never had that going on in our system. But we did have the idea that you could defend yourself, your family members, anyone who is at your home or on your property, and you could defend your property. That exists in Canadian law. We don't need to pass new laws. We need to enforce the right ones. And lawyer I was speaking with on this issue said, if premiers like Danielle Smith and Doug Ford want to make sure that we don't end up charging people who should not be charged, well, there's an easy thing to do. You change the guidance and the directives that you send out to your local police forces and your Crown prosecutors. That, they said, is the best thing that could happen.
So what you know of castle law then, Brian, is it that only if somebody is harming you inside your house, or is it the minute they break in that you have the right to?
Well, you always have the right to defend yourself. I mean, your response has to be reasonable and proportionate. If someone shows up and they're completely unarmed and they, come into your house and you shoot them, yeah, you're going to get charged. If someone shows up in your home, as did happen in Lindsay, Ontario a little while ago, guy shows up with a crossbow in the middle of the night. I think it was 3 a.m., breaks into your house with a crossbow, and you defend yourself with a kitchen knife. Well, in my view, you shouldn't be charged.
And Brian, you had previously mentioned Ontario Premier Doug Ford. So I wanted to ask a quick question here. So Premier Ford has threatened to take Crown Royal off the shelves in Ontario's government-run liquor stores. So why is he attacking a Canadian product made in Manitoba?
So Crown Royal is made either in Gimli, Manitoba or Valleyfield, Quebec. And, it's a long-standing, wonderful Canadian business. 75% of all Crown Royals sold globally goes to the U.S. Now, there was a bottling shop. They don't produce it there, but they bottle it in Amherstburg, Ontario, which is near Windsor. And they have decided that this does not make logistical sense anymore. This is not a this is not a decision that is based on Donald Trump or the tariffs. This is based on logistics and supply chain. And I'm told the decision was made before Trump was even reelected last November. So they've decided they're going to eliminate this bottling plant. They're going to move some bottling to the U.S. Doug Ford has decided to go to war with Crown Royal and their parent company, Diageo. He's threatening to take Crown Royal off the shelves, which would harm Canadian jobs. He's also threatening to take every Diageo product off the shelves, which would include Guinness Beer, Tanqueray Gin, Captain Morgan Rum, Smirnoff Vodka. Like, this is one of the biggest liquor companies on the planet with some of the most popular brands. And he's saying, you cross me and I will use the power of our liquor board, which is both the retailer and the wholesaler, to block you. This is a ridiculous idea. Doug Ford needs to calm down.
Yeah, that's almost a Trump move where it's like, if you cross me, I will, do something against you.
And he's denouncing Trump, which has nothing to do with this decision.
Right.
He's denouncing Trump and calling Trump a bully while threatening to do this.
Yes.
So, okay, you're saying Trump's a bully, but you're going to shut down an entire company because they crossed you politically?
Especially
that sounds like a bully move to me.
A Canadian company, especially, which we're just so preaching by Canadian. And then he's doing this. Interesting. Oh, Brian, so great to have you on today. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Well, it won't be long before municipal elections take place across Alberta. It is happening on October the 20th. And today we have the opportunity to speak with one of the candidates vying for a seat on City Council in Lethbridge. Most of you will know him as an incumbent and also the former mayor of Lethbridge. Rayko Dodick is here with me now in studio. Great to have you with me today, Rayko.
Great to be here.
Great. Okay, so welcome. It's always great to have you here. All right, so like I mentioned in the intro there, many people know you as mayor. So how long ago was that? You were mayor from 2010 to 2013?
That's correct. That's when the terms were 3 years, both the councillor and mayor. And then it just changed to 4-year terms, which we have now.
Yeah. So you took a little break from politics. What made you come back?
Well, I have to back up a little bit. The reason I took a break from politics was I found out in 2013 I was about to become a grandfather, so I realized that doing the mayor's job is really a full-time job, and I wanted to be able to spend time with my soon-to-be grandchildren, which is what happened. Took 8 years off. Decided I'd give it a run, come back. I enjoyed the experience of being in municipal politics, and here we are.
Yeah, here we are. So you're now going to run for council again. So now you've had the experience of being both mayor and councillor.
Yes.
Which do you like better?
I prefer being the councillor for a couple of reasons. Well, number one is that the mayor and the councillors each have the same number of votes, so the mayor doesn't have any more power in terms of voting. The other thing is there's a lot of ceremony to the mayoral job, so you're out a lot of weekends, most weekends, a lot of events. People would like to see the mayor out and about visiting their organization or their function or wherever it might be, and I prefer the job of being an elected official as opposed to the ceremonial aspects of it.
All that
I still
ribbon
do.
cutting.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
All
right.
What made you want to come back to politics after you took that nice break?
Well, you know what? It's because when I was involved in it from starting in 2004 to 2013, I really did enjoy it. I enjoyed being able to be involved in moving the city forwards, and I just wanted to experience that again. And I felt that with my background, that I still had something to contribute in terms of fulfilling that job of a councillor.
Definitely. You know, many councillors are kind of voicing their need these days for better transparency and trust in council decisions. So what needs to be done to ensure that that happens?
Well, you know, all council decisions are made in public. Okay, we do have closed sessions, but closed sessions meetings are those that involved, for example, labor issues. For example, you don't want to be discussing what sort of contract negotiations you're going to have. There may be legal issues involved, but in reality, transparency is a word that's tossed around a lot, but in fact, transparency is what you do get because all decisions are actually made in public. So the votes that you see, whether it be raising taxes, you may not like them, but they're made in public, and the debates on them are made in public. So, I mean, you can always have more transparency, but I think people have to realize that just what I said is that the transparency is there. You just have to understand that what it really means in the context of municipal politics.
Yeah, you've sat in the mayoral seat, you've sat in the councillor seat, you've seen a lot of things happen and come and go in Lethbridge. What do you think has been the biggest issue in any of your times?
The biggest issues have always been crime, safety, and that has been exacerbated by the unfortunate increase in the opioid crisis, which unfortunately that is a very visible manifestation in our community. So if you go downtown, unfortunately sometimes you'll see these poor unfortunate folk walking around. Some of the hidden problems or that are not spoken as often about, which involves the opiate crisis, is the impact it has on our protective services, the police and the emergency personnel that have to deal with both the homeless and the people that are involved in the opiate addiction, and that negatively impacts them and their families as well. So it's tough all the way around, and the solution is not something that's going to be found quickly.
No, exactly. What about that situation with homelessness and encampments and addiction? So what do you see as a potential solution for all of these challenges? It's so complicated.
Well, it is complicated because, without getting into too much technicalities, opium addiction or addiction, alcohol addiction for that matter as well, does change brain patterns, and sometimes you might not be able to have the brain come back, or it's not as elastic as you might want it to be, so the person might be so damaged, so hurt, that treatment might not be of assistance. But on the other hand, you can simply say, well, we're not going to try to do something. So you're caught between this rock and the proverbial hard spot, saying you want to help, but the help that you're giving, is it effective? And is it going to be long-lasting? Or is it just going to be a continuous problem as we go forward?
Yeah. What's your opinion on what the province is wanting to do with the forced treatment?
As a lawyer, I have mixed feelings about that. The rights of individuals and things of that nature. But if what we're doing now isn't working, in the back of your mind, you think, look, the people, you have to assume the opiate addict would prefer not to be an opiate addict. Right. Okay. But they're not prepared to take the treatment that's available to them, and that could be a function of their brain not being able to make that conscious decision. So the province's potential solution is forced treatment, and I know that sounds absolutely horrific, that may be dystopian and things of that nature, but maybe it does merit a try to see if it in fact works. I just don't know the answer, but something has to be done, and maybe that's an option, and it's an option that a lot of people won't like, but it's also an option that has to be considered. If you don't consider everything, then you're not looking at it in a fulsome way.
Yeah. Sort of related to that is we were talking about public safety, obviously huge concern. So what do you think needs to be done to reduce crime in the city?
That's always a difficult one.
Yeah.
Well, it truly is $1 million question because making sure that protective services are properly funded. You may recall, or your viewers may recall, that the police budget was sort of put on hold there during the COVID years, and the problem with that is that they fell behind the curveball, so to speak, and then you had to play catch up, which of course means you have to increase their budget, which means you have to raise their taxes, which means people are unhappy of that. Yes. So when we talk about more services does by necessity imply the taxes are going to be greater. Or you can hope that the province and the federal government will come in with money that they have to assist us in the public safety and protective services front.
Speaking of raising taxes and not wanting to raising taxes, we've just recently been subject to a lot of traffic concerns with the bridge.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on getting a new bridge for Lethbridge?
That was a question in the last election. It was a non-binding question, and I think it was something like 70% said yes, they wanted a new bridge. But it's one of those questions that says, would you like a brand new car? And says, yes, I would.
Right.
But the follow-up question was asked, and would you be prepared to pay X amount for it?
Right.
So that was a question I posed to administration, and they said for a bridge within city limits is a local project, which would mean that it would have to be 100% funded by taxpayers. And that translated into a 10% dedicated tax increase for 15 years, on top of whatever other taxes you have to pay for fire, EMS, for infrastructure, for police, and that sort of thing. So when you put it in that perspective, you can see that there will be a pushback from citizens who want that third level crossing, and you run into who's going to pay for it and how are you going to pay for it. And that kind of a tax increase would be very unpalatable for most people.
And I know there were a lot of studies and whatnot done on it. Is there any chance to get any provincial help there?
Yes, years ago there was discussions with Municipal Affairs and the Minister of Infrastructure, and that when you have what would be considered ring roads, so if you had, for example, a further south crossing, that there was at least discussions that the province might be able to contribute 2/3 or 3/4 of the cost, which then is a lot more doable of a project. But years ago, we tried to keep both options open, but unfortunately the council today, myself not included, voted by 5-4 not to keep the southern option open. So right now we only have that one option available. However, I'm not giving up on a further southern option, which would then mean that we could discuss seriously with the province and the federal governments that contributing towards the cost of the bridge. Yeah. So it's not borne completely by the property taxpayer.
Okay, all right. Speaking of taxes, always an election issue for sure. So what direction do you think the city should take on that? Is it necessary to see taxes go up to keep up with the services that residents need or want, or is there a place to cut back on these expenses and still keep taxes stable?
Well, when you ask the citizens, they're going to tell you they want lower taxes, but they'll also say they want greater services. When you also ask people individually, which services do you want cut? And some people will say, well, we don't want as much spent on parks, or we don't want as much spent on transit, or we don't want as much spent on pick your topic of choice.
Yeah.
But you're never going to get 100% of the people saying that we want this to be reduced, or this to be reduced, or that to be reduced. So you're caught between a rock and a hard spot.
Yeah, you're trying to please everybody.
And not only that, I mean, the majority of the cost is associated with ensuring that our employees are paid. And so, the vast majority of the budget is something that we have little control over in any event.
Yeah, no, exactly. Why should people vote for you? Just to kind of wrap things up here.
Why should they vote for me?
Yes.
I get that as a question asked a lot. You'd think I'd have a good, nice, prepared, canned answer for that. But usually what I tell people is that, I'm not like most politicians. I don't make promises and say, well, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. What I do say is that I will read all the material that is provided to me. I will ask the questions that I feel are necessary to be asked. And based on the material provided, the questions asked and answered, I will then make what I consider to be an informed decision. It may not be the popular decision, but it's going to be the decision that I think is the correct one. And I think for municipal politicians, what you want is someone that's going to actually do the work, ask the questions, and make the best decision they can.
All right. Reiko, thank you so much for joining me today in studio. It was a pleasure having you here.
It was a pleasure being here.
All right, and good luck. Reiko Dodic is a candidate for Lethbridge City Council, and that election, of course, coming up October 20th. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.